I'm here with Teal Swan, the international spiritual teacher. So very blessed to have you to speak with me today. Honestly, it's really an honor. I'm talking today about eating disorders, as it's something that I'm an expert in because I've had one for 7 years now, and I really truly believe that it's a bit of an epidemic now. I read the other day that 1 in 3 women might have an eating disorder in their lifetime. So it's something I'm very passionate about because it's never really been spoken in depth in a spiritual way. Well, not that I've seen on the internet, and I see you as a bit of an expert. So to start off with something a bit more general, what is your experience with people with eating disorders, or have you had any experience, specifically bulimia?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with a bunch of people that have bulimia. I think it's an epidemic thing
Yeah.
as well. And for a while growing up, I was involved in the ballet world where bulimia is like, every other girl.
Yeah. So it's seen as something not like common, but a normal problem to have. This is one thing I was intrigued by. Do people that have bulimia have a common problem that started it off?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Do tell.
Well, in fact, all eating disorders have something in common. The way it manifests in bulimics, of course, is also, let's say, its individual trend. But with eating disorders, all of it is about boundary violation.
Boundary violation. Okay.
So what it is basically, it's relentless intrusion. So it means that the person who has developed an eating disorder grew up in an atmosphere where they had no say over what happened with them, their preferences, their sense of self. So the adults in the area were basically bulldozing them constantly. That can take the form of overt abuse, things that you'd be familiar with, things like sexual abuse or emotional abuse. But more commonly, actually, what happens is that you're with a parent who's not attuned to the child. So the child the children, let's say, are seen as accessory to the adult. And so the adult does what the adult wants to do. And when the kid tries to assert a desire or a like or a dislike, it's basically passed over, not acknowledged, and so the child gets this feeling that there's this absolute hopelessness to being able to have what it wants, be what it wants, and so there's this, it's like almost being out of control. I mean, imagine if you're little, let's say that, I mean, this is just a common scenario. Let's say you're little and we're at feeding time, right?
Feeding time.
I mean, it can't, a lot of with eating disorders, obviously a lot of it does revolve around food choices.
Yes.
But I mean, it's an emotional thing, so it doesn't have to necessarily be bad. But that's why I'm picking this particular example.
Yeah.
Let's say I got a bowl of raspberries, and you're not very hungry or whatever. But I've decided as your mother that not only are you hungry, but you're going to eat it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be like, no, you're going to eat it. Here.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm not letting you get down until you do.
Yeah.
Not only am I, as a parent, not acknowledging that you have your own sense of self, meaning you know whether you're hungry or not.
Yeah.
I'm saying it doesn't matter whether you are going to protest. You don't get to protest. So not only is it not acknowledged, you don't get to protest. Not only do you not get to protest, you get to adhere to what I want you to do, or else there's a consequence.
Yeah.
So basically...
But why food? Why food then? Why food is the result of that and not another addiction? Or could it have been either?
It could have been another addiction, but food is the one thing that you get to control. And what I notice with eating disorders is that when you're dealing with somebody with an eating disorder, you're dealing with a perfectionist. That's somebody who cares a hell of a lot about other people's opinions. And so you can't do something that other people would disapprove of. So your addictions are going to be covert. Like, it's not going to be the type of personality type that like shoots up heroin and then ends up like on the parents' couch like this.
Because it's too wrong.
Yeah.
Would you say? So the eating disorder is the lesser of the addictions in that mindset. They're like, well, that's not as bad.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed you said once was...
And it's easier to control. Because like, you see, if you were to shoot up a drug or something...
you can't control it. You can't get rid of it. That's really true. And then with alcohol, the same kind of thing. Okay. Excellent news. No. What I was going to say is I've heard once you said that people with eating disorders had a common problem between right and wrong in their childhood. And you're also linking it to being a perfectionist. So does that mean they need to get rid of their perfectionist tendencies or loosen the boundary of what is right and what is wrong in their life to get deeper into letting it go?
Yeah, that would be ideal.
That would be ideal.
It would be super ideal. It's just much
How would
easier
you do?
said than done.
Yeah, I mean, how would you go about that? I mean, it's changing someone's mindset.
Yeah, well, questioning right and wrong. I think it's really good.
Within their life or within eating?
Within everything.
Whoa.
you've got to basically be able to jump outside the paradigm to be able to actually question the ideas that you have that are so set about what is right and what is wrong. And
oh my God,
more than
yeah,
that
yeah.
is that a person who has an eating disorder really needs to get a solid sense of self.
Yeah.
Like the idea that I can actually, not only am I worthy, worthiness is like a super big issue for eating disorders. So not only am I worthy of fulfillment, but I can actually make that happen in my life.
Yeah.
See, obviously, if you've got a parent who's like, I don't care what you want and don't want. In fact, I'm not even going to tell you that I don't care. I'm just going to continue to act as if you are like a puppy that I, like, treat them like animals. You're a puppy that I really just can't understand. We speak a different language, and so I'm going to tell you when to go to the bathroom. I'm going to tell you when you're hungry. Fully. So basically, having that unattuned adult gives you the idea that you have no self. So actually developing a self and seeing, oh, when I'm hungry, I get to choose to go eat. Or when I don't feel like doing something, I get to say that.
Yeah.
And like what I work with people who've got bulimia especially, bulimics have an issue around the idea of enough. So when you're watching this type of a child, usually the intrusions are about like somebody relentlessly doing something to you, and then you can't say when enough is enough.
Okay.
See how that's a boundary?
Yeah, and then that's linked to the food, obviously, because they're eating so much. They have no concept of what is enough.
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
Yes. So like we work with the concept of me being able to say when enough is enough.
Yeah.
So let's pretend you're out with your friends, right?
Yeah.
You're a perfectionist and you care a lot about what other people think.
Yeah.
So what you'll watch, this is how it manifests quite often. You've got a friend who's like, oh my God, you guys, we should go out on Friday night. So they take you to an area that's really too crowded.
Yeah.
And you're starting to get like a little bit oversensitized. So what you need, right, is to kind of corral yourself in a little bit and cocoon. But you don't speak that need. And so it goes on. And suddenly like going out turns into, oh my gosh, you know what we should do? We should drive somewhere and go skinny dipping. And you already didn't want to do it, but you still do it. So like what the boundary that really needed to be set was enough is enough.
Yeah.
Enough, you guys, I need to fill in the blank, do something different.
Yeah.
But because that boundary isn't set, now suddenly like the only go-to you have for absolute control of your body and is basically to simulate the experience of enough through basically eating and then being like, okay, enough is enough, and then you vomit.
Yeah.
So that's the emotional experience you're going through with that.
Can it get to the point as well from that it becomes addicting? Like, can you get addicted to the food itself? Because I felt over the years, and I'm sure other women have felt this, that you even get a sense of when you eat anything, it can spurn on that addictiveness. Like, I'm sure the same sensation if someone had a bit of alcohol, if they're an alcoholic, or and why is that then? So there is something physical in it? It becomes something?
No. What it is, it's a behavioral addiction. So you're addicted to the chemicals your own body starts releasing in response to the addiction and also the ritual of the addiction. So what you'll notice is that let's say you got a cutter. A cutter doesn't have to be in the act of cutting. They start to get a release of those chemicals that their brain is actually addicted to the minute they start thinking about cutting.
Yeah.
So for a bulimic, it's about what foods am I going to eat. Then you start thinking about it. Then you start arranging.
Yeah,
it.
You're like putting fuel into it already. I know from my experiences, I would get excited at the idea of going to a shopping center. Like that was part of it. I would be like, I knew, like looking back on it, I can see that I was going into that state of mind already. What intrigues me is, so there's this common theme. What makes someone start being bulimic at 13 as opposed to 19 or 25, or like when does it go bang, enough, you know what I mean?
I've seen it be different for all people, but oftentimes you see the onset in teenage years because people are going through the second phase of individuation. So the primary phase of individuation is where the actual wound occurred. That's when, so like as a baby you have no concept of separate self. Then when you start to develop a separate concept of self is when you start to really realize, oh, I can say no to something. But yet again, when you're with a parent that's not attuned, that doesn't care about honoring no, then basically you don't get to develop a healthy sense of self. So the wounding is about age 1 to 3.
1 to 3, that's young.
Yeah, and then so you graduate and you go through. There are these different, very important phases of individuation. The next major phase of individuation is teen years. That's when I become a separate individual, but I'm still living in the household. The next major phase is when you're moving out of the house, and I get to be a separate individual being, but this time outside of the house.
Yeah, actually, for me, that was when it was a real problem. That's when it started. I wonder if that's about control as well. Like suddenly it's all in my control and you freak out almost at the responsibility of everything. And I really liked what you said before about worthiness and self-worth, because for me, and I'm hoping for a lot of women or men out there, the main problem is you don't know yourself. I met someone a few years ago and she was like, tell me about you. And she was a spiritual teacher and I said nothing. I was like, I literally have no idea.
It's because you got no mirroring. And so this is, everybody wants like a really spiritual, esoteric answer to this, but it's really that when you come into a family where no proper mirroring is happening, then you can't get a sense of self. So, do you understand? Has anybody talked to you about the concept of mirroring as a mirror?
Mirroring is in the world, is mirroring back to you,
No.
who you are. Okay, so I don't know.
Okay, this is how it goes.
The mirror?
When you're hungry and I hand you a bowl of raspberries and you're 1.5, and you say no, and I go, oh, okay, no, and I take the bowl away from you, that actually reinforces your sense of self. You go, oh,
I see.
me.
I see. Yeah.
So you essentially learn who you are through the eyes of the people that are around you.
Okay.
That's why so much of our personality is completely like fabricated. It's nothing but the reflection of
That's
what other
crazy
people
though.
have
That's
seen in
like
us.
completely insane, really.
Do you see what's happening with your type of upbringing?
Yeah, completely.
There is no reflection.
I didn't get a choice on anything ever.
There's no reflection.
Yeah, no.
So
That's really
basically,
interesting.
when you tried to assert yourself, there was no reflection back. When you said you were sad, no, you were not. There's no reason to be sad. So then you go, this is what I feel, and yet there's nothing on the external reality telling me that that's true, then I am like invisible. Woohoo! So you start to get this feeling that you're bleeding into everything. It's actually a terrifying feeling for a toddler.
Would you say then, for recovery, the most important thing for someone with bulimia to do is to start knowing themselves?
100%.
Even if it's like, you because I think it's a serious disease, it could kill you.
Oh, yeah.
So you should treat it like someone with cancer and they're like, oh, I'm happy to quit my job. Happy to go to extremes in all areas of life. Start to reevaluate exactly who you are, what sports you like, who your friends are, what your job is. And would you recommend just going straight out?
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
But I have people pretend that they're extraterrestrial beings.
Pretends that they're extra.
Day one on Earth. So you basically got to start all over again.
Okay.
You don't know what you like, you don't know what you don't like. You're having your first experiences with people, your first experiences with places. How do I feel in this place? What does it feel like to eat this food? Like all of it. You just from square one, as if you never experienced anything before, so you can get a set on what your preferences are.
That's what I'm doing today.
Okay.
No, actually, you've just brought me to another good point then. So if their sense of self is lost, oh gosh, I think I've lost this now. If they've lost their sense of self in their upbringing, they are also more susceptible to mainstream media manipulation, maybe, of women's bodies and stuff.
Much.
Because as you're saying that, I can totally hear it. Because I've always felt like part of my problem, which I'm hoping a lot of women will be able to relate to, hopefully I'm asking the right questions for everyone out there, is that you do have that little bit of body insecurity. Or maybe it's a lot.
Bit.
Okay, maybe it's a lot. Maybe it's a lot. But you do have that element in it. But you also know that it's not what drives it. So it's very frustrating when you go to get help from a psychologist or someone and they're like, oh, you need to be, or like my mom would be like, oh, you're lovely, darling. You look wonderful. And you're like, that's great, but it's not just that. And you know that there's an element of that. So because someone doesn't know themselves and because they're open to suggestions from the world, because they let that in as a child, that's like the two elements of disaster happening.
Well,
would
you're
you say?
still looking for mirroring. So what does society teach you? How do you get mirroring? The only way you get validation, which is mirroring, is by becoming what they're going to validate. So
I see. Yeah.
The world saying, look, I'm going to be who I am, and that's going to be validated back to me. And
Yeah.
that doesn't happen. So, all right, what do people validate? I'll be that then. So that's where the perfectionist begins.
Yeah, I mean, over the last couple of years has been an interesting journey for me, and I spoke to a lot of friends that have bulimia specifically, and I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, wearing tons of makeup and going out in tight dresses, I didn't even like it. I wasn't even enjoying it, and yet we do these things perpetually. And I mean, it's actually mind blowing when you get to that point when you think, I literally don't even know myself. Okay, on to a different chain of thought.
I don't want to go on to a different chain of thought yet because I have something that's really super critical to
Yes,
understand.
go.
Things like bulimia are the result of developmental disorder. So it's an aspect of development which was halted and not allowed to continue. And so what's really critical is to actually get mirroring. So one of the most important aspects of healing from eating disorders specifically is to surround yourself with the people who can provide that mirroring. So oftentimes you're not thinking about that because, I mean, everything in the self-help field is about you being able to do everything for yourself.
Yeah.
But a real critical piece of it is, who do I spend my time around?
Yeah.
And this is sort of one of those things where you have to let people in on it.
And
that's
really
really
interesting.
hard for a bulimic, but a bulimic has to be able to say, look, you guys, I have bulimia, I've suffered from it for this long. Let me explain the disorder to you.
Yeah.
And then you can let people in on the fact that what I have a hard time with is knowing what I want and don't want and knowing me. And so the conversation you have to have with your peers is, when we go out, this is what I need your help doing.
Yeah.
I
find that I don't know why. It's super emotional. I don't know why.
Well, I mean, because this is what you didn't get. It's what you want so bad. This is what you want. Like, you've been lonely. Nobody's seen you. So you've got to be in
Sorry.
This is good.
Yeah.
See, like, this emotional breakthrough, that's your institutional being like, this is what I really need.
Yeah. No, it's really important, especially if, like, because you know that when you get to this level of emotion, you're like, God, what the hell was in there, like, waiting, that wanted some attention? And this is the reason I wanted to speak to you, because I felt like there wasn't these answers out there, and I want people to go into themselves and to know that there are other girls that are going through exactly the same thing. Do I have black running down my face?
I'm just like, I didn't want to come in the shower.
No, thank you so much. It's really amazing. Yeah.
So this is what it looks like, and I want you to really get this, because this is obviously the most important part of your healing in a lot of women. So you sit down with your friends and you have this conversation.
Yeah.
Where you basically say, this is my issue, this is what it's about, let me explain it, why it happens.
Yeah.
And then you're going to basically say, my issue is I have a very hard time even knowing what my own boundaries are.
Yeah.
So what I need from you guys is to check in with me. That means that when you're out, they'll say, oh, so let me ask you a question right now, just as your friend. Do you like the outfit you're wearing? Are you wearing it for you, or are you wearing it for other people?
Yeah.
What color would you like to wear?
Yeah.
What restaurant would we really like to go to?
Yeah.
What you're going to notice is you're going to freeze.
Yeah.
The first thing that's going to happen is
I don't know. Why are you asking me?
I'll just do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
But, like, your friends have to be in a place where they're patient enough to help you figure out what you want.
Yeah.
And then follow through. And have you actually get the experience of seeing that you can decide what to do with your life, that other people care what you want. See how that goes?
Yeah,
So
completely.
That's the new practice.
And again, it's not looking at the symptom of disease, it's looking at something much different, which is, I think, what a psychologist try to do in some level. But I think the frustrating thing for me and a lot of girls is that the first thing they do is go, okay, write down everything you eat all day. And you're like, that's not really helpful for me to write down absolutely everything and put so much focus into food itself. I really don't want more food. But what you're saying is completely different. And I think the most important thing, connection and support.
You know my honest truth about addiction?
Go.
If I had my way, if people understood, addictions are accessory to a deeper issue.
Yeah, of course.
That always involves isolation, i.e. the result of not being seen, heard, felt, no intimacy, fill in the blank. That is at the heart of every addiction, no matter what it is. What we need to stop doing is giving, a hoot, essentially, about what the addiction is.
Yeah.
Drop it.
Yeah.
It doesn't fucking matter, actually.
Yeah.
Like, the only thing that matters is the emotional conditions that are fueling the addiction. Because if you take care of that, there is no draw towards the addiction. Like, we don't seem to get this yet. We think that there's something addictive about substances themselves.
Yeah.
But we've already disproven it in the 70s.
Yeah.
That's what's like, what's taking everybody so long to catch up? That's already been done. Like, so did I ever talk to you about the lab rats before?
I actually was about to tell you about lab rats just then. I read that article.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
It's pissing me this. I'm gonna tell you about it.
She's angry now, guys.
Yes, I'm angry. Alright, so this thing basically is finally making a circulation again, 50 years later?
Yeah.
But basically, way back in the 70s, they were doing all these studies on addictive drugs. So they wanted to study cocaine, they wanted to study heroin, all these things. Cocaine was the first one they did. So they laced the mice, or rats, they laced their water with cocaine. And yeah, sure enough, the rats are like, yay, going back to it, going back to it. So here's the scientist that's like, yep, definitely addictive. But what he noticed is that there's this variable. And with scientific experiments, it's all about the variables, right? The variable in the experiment was that every time these rats were being, addicted to this particular medicine, they were in cages by themselves. So he thought to himself, what if we changed the environment at all?
Gave him a rat heaven.
Yeah, so he basically built that, and the key ingredient there is that there were other rats. Not only did they not become addicted to the substance, they shunned it.
I read that and I thought it was mind-blowing.
Basically, what that says, it's proven what the rest of us know, which is that isolation is the root of all addiction. So what the hell, who cares about what's in the water bottle? Who cares whether it's food? Who cares whether it's color? Who cares whether it's heroin?
Yeah.
If you have an emotional condition present, still, there's going to be a cause to use.
So get connected and know yourself.
Yes.
Start knowing yourself would be the 2 basic first steps for someone with an eating disorder.
Yeah, and surround yourself with people who are going to actually facilitate that change for you and with you.
Yeah. And turn it into something that is
just so you know, bulimia is the same as every other addiction.
Yes, I wanted to talk to you about that.
People who fuel the addiction. And for people with eating disorders, people who fuel the addiction are narcissists. They're people who say, I don't care whether you have wants or dislikes or likes. Your entire purpose for being is to serve me as a person. So just pay close attention to how unseen you feel by the people in your life.
Well, actually, in my case, I don't want to go too much into me because I didn't want to do that too much, but I seem to take myself to places where I am isolated, so I'm putting myself in that position. Like right now I'm living in Budapest with not many friends around me, so when you're saying this stuff I'm like, oh my god, am I making the right things, and am I doing the same circle over and over again?
Yes, you are, because the choice becomes, do I get bulldozed and bullied
and
ignored and not seen, or, which is isolation, in a crowded room. Or do I withdraw, which is the last beat of safety, and end up isolated, but just alone and isolated this time? So, it's like isolation or isolation. That's what has to end. But to do that, to actually get genuine companionship, you got to put your vulnerability out there. Because the people who are going to bulldoze you aren't going to want anything to do with that. They're going to be the kind of people who are like, yeah, no, basically we're friends because you serve some function for me. It's just so you know. So when you end that transaction, I'm not so okay with this. But instead, the space is going to be filled with people who are like, yeah, I wasn't here for what you do for me. Let's actually have a genuine connection so I can see who you are and whatever. And then you find compatible people where enough is enough of being at the club or not even going in the first place works for everyone. Or else a person who cares about you enough to say, okay, if I want this and you want something else, let's figure out how we can both get our needs met at the same time. It's not about me winning or you winning.
Okay, good stuff. Okay, one thing I've been really intrigued by, because you see stuff, to put it lightly, I'm not going to ask exactly what you see because I know that you hate that, but do you see a common vibration? Do I have black?
Please, if you could just
Oh my god.
just because when we close up and you can see it. I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine. Sorry about this.
Sorry.
Shouldn't have worn mascara. I knew I was going to cry.
That's great.
I was going to ask, do you think that there's the same vibration that they're at, people with bulimia, as opposed to people that are alcoholics and people that are drug addicts? Because they're all addictions, or is it the same vibration that is being emitted?
Well, there's a slightly different vibration in them because it's a slightly different personality type.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's the same. What I should say is they all have the common frequency of being isolated in a crowded room.
Yeah. And I was going to say, can someone be spiritually... this is going to not be the best question to ask. Can someone be okay and be in alignment to some level, be connected, be quite spiritually in tune to some level and still have an addiction?
Yes.
How much does the addiction bring them down, do you think?
Well, it basically widens the gap between what we would consider to be the eternal self, what we've been calling soul. But really the body is just a projection of the soul. But the vibrational difference between your eternal self and how it views life and how it views you is a lot different than the way that the temporal self views the world, views itself, most especially itself.
Mm-hmm.
So like the self-concept here is very damaged and therefore vibrating at a super lower frequency than this.
Yeah.
But we're interesting on a vibrational level. Like you're looking at an overall vibration with people. However, that is basically a conjunction of a lot of different vibrations relative to every subject in life.
Mm-hmm.
So like you could have a really high vibration relative to a lot of things, and then on one area a very low vibration.
Okay.
But, so it drags down the overall vibration,
Yeah.
but this is what makes people so confusing.
Yeah.
Is that they can be so enlightened in some areas and just so not in
Yeah.
other areas.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, definitely. And I met someone recently. It was a master of Prananadi, an energetic system. I'm not sure you're aware of. He translated this information through my boyfriend that said my problem was specifically from a past life, mainly. And I found that intriguing because I've never really liked the idea of past life things because I think it's a bit too, it's a problem, it wasn't my fault, or it's a little bit too passing off of the blame. If it could be a past life problem, would you recommend that a lot of women people have with eating disorders have past life problems, and should they get past life healing, or can it be fixed from the present?
Well, I'm the kind of person who's going to say that your past life doesn't carry over.
Mm.
The only reason that we experience that carryover is because based on the
Start
lives
looking
you
for it.
have lived...
I said we start looking for it.
Well, ultimately, based on the lives that you have lived, when you go back to source consciousness in between lives,
Yep.
you're looking at what you gained out of those lives, and based off of that experience, you're making your next choice. So let's say that in this life, right, you went and you took a bunch of ayahuasca down in Brazil, and it did like amazing things for your expansion. Chances are 20 years later, if you want another, like you're sort of craving something, you're going to go back towards a shamanic experience. That's similar to how it works outside this dimension as well. The soul kind of goes, wow, I got a lot of experience out of that one. And so a lot of times it will opt back into similar circumstances, play similar cards, for example, so it can get more expansion relative to that subject. That's the only reason that this life relates to those lives. Absolutely, your reason for being so messed up, if people are thinking that way in this life, has to do with your childhood environment.
Yeah.
That's what it has to do with.
Yeah.
So going back to past lives, completely unnecessary. I mean, if that was how it worked, you would remember them all. But you don't. So basically, what it is about, if you want to go do that, it's that, I mean, a person sitting, let's say that I read past lives. If I sat down and I told you about a past life that made all of your bulimia make sense to you, you don't even have any idea if that is your past life or any past life of anyone's that I'm pulling out of the ether that is a vibrational match to where you currently are. So the only reason that works in general for people, because it does work, is that you relate to it.
Yeah, you just believe it.
You identify with it.
Yeah.
So if you identify with something and I'm working to improve that vibration, it causes an increase in your vibration here in the present moment. So I would never say to somebody, like, never do past life regression, because I've seen it work for people.
Yeah.
Does that mean that the ultimate truth is that was your life and it resolved because you have to resolve past life karma? Hell no.
Yeah. It's kind of one of those things like you believe what you want to believe. And if it works for you, if you believe it, it does seem to work for you. I did one, and because I had a bit of faith in it, I felt like the whole thing was a projection of my mind, but at the same time I said it was quite soothing. It's like going for a massage or something. Yeah. Okay. But the main thing really to wrap up, I guess, is to focus, we don't have much time, is to focus on knowing yourself and getting that connection in your life.
Yes.
Okay.
With a bow.
With a bow. With a bow. Thank you so much for watching this interview with Teal Swan on bulimia and eating disorders. I really hope that you've all gained a lot of information about it. Have you got any departing words of wisdom?
Departing words of wisdom?
Departing words of wisdom in 20 seconds. We'll leave it with a smile. We'll leave it with a smile.
In 20 seconds. I feel like the reason that we're doing this particular interview today is because it's so critical for us in this day and age to actually start caring about each other's emotional states. Because a lot of times we don't emotionally tune into people enough to see where they are and see what they really want. So either we're being bulldozed emotionally or we're bulldozing other people emotionally. And if we want a real change on an emotional level on this planet, which is what it's going to require for this to be any different than it is, we're going to have to develop that sensitivity to ourselves, the way we feel, and to how other people feel. And actually create a kind of structure in our social groups that enables people to feel supported and nourished in that emotional environment, as opposed to being pushed around and feeling like everybody has to act how everyone else wants them to act. So it's that softness which I would hope that we would all develop in the world for ourselves and also for each other.
I think she said it perfectly. Thank you so much.
Thank you.